assaults, shortly followed by Ronan Farrow's piece in The New Yorker. One of the people reading about Weinstein was the actor Alyssa Milano. She sent out this tweet and then went to sleep. If you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write "Me Too" as a reply to this tweet. Well, she woke up to tens of thousands of responses and the realization she had kick-started the, quote, "Me Too" movement. An idea, actually, that was founded in 2006 by the activist Tarana Burke. Well, both Milano and Burke were at the Kavanaugh hearings last week to support Christine Blasey Ford, with Milano easily seen on TV sitting behind Kavanaugh. And joining me now from Southern California is Alyssa Milano, and from New York, Tarana Burke. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us.
Tarana Burke, let me start with you. And you heard me play earlier the quote from Christine Blasey Ford, where she talked about her fear of coming out and simply stepping in front of a train that was already headed to its destination. What are the repercussions of that?
Well, I mean, the repercussions will remain to be seen, but I think her stepping out was something that we needed to have happen in this movement. It's been largely focused on Hollywood and on individual bad actors, and I think her coming forward really set the stage for survivors to have a different role in this movement than we've seen over the last year.
Alyssa Milano, the journalist Sally Quinn wrote in her memoir last year about an attempted rape by a now deceased Senator John Tower when she was a college student in the 60s. When John Tower was nominated to be the defense secretary in 1989, she talked about it and she declined to talk about it with the FBI. Well, a reporter at The New Yorker, Susan Glasser, asked her about it. Let me show you what Susan Glasser wrote. She said, "I called Sally Quinn the night before Christine Blasey Ford's testimony to ask what she thought about her own experience all these years later. And she goes, I could have been Anita Hill," she pointed out, "but I didn't want to. I didn't want to ruin my life. Nothing has changed since Anita Hill. Not a damn thing." Is she right?
I think a lot has changed, but I also think a lot hasn't changed. And yesterday we may have lost a political battle, but I do think we are winning the cultural battle. And often I don't fight for the win. I'm fighting so that generations don't have to deal with the abuses of power that we've had to deal with. So in a respect, I think she is right, but then I do think that there's a lot going on. And I think this cultural shift that we're feeling, this collective pain that we're feeling from survivors coming forward is going to be able to be translated into a collective power to say that we're not going to be silenced any longer.
Tarana Burke, you know, Susan Collins said that she was really angry at the leaker about this story, that it forced Dr. Ford into the public square, and maybe she wasn't ready, or maybe it wasn't handled right. Do you think the United States Senate, and in particular Senator Feinstein, didn't handle this correctly from the outset and made Dr. Ford more vulnerable than necessary?
I wouldn't say she didn't handle it right. She followed the leadership of the survivor. People shouldn't have to be forced out of and to tell their story. And so if she asked for privacy, I understand why Senator Feinstein decided to respect that privacy. I think this is really indicative of how we don't understand in this country the life cycle of a survivor and what it takes to actually mount up the courage to come forward, particularly in a situation like this. So I think fine. I wish that after it was revealed and after it was leaked, it was handled better.
Alyssa Milano, I want to get you to respond to what Emily Yoff wrote in The Atlantic this week. The problem with believed survivors. She writes this: "Even as we must treat accusers with seriousness and dignity, we must hear out the accused fairly and respectfully and recognize the potential lifetime consequences that such an allegation can bring. If believing the woman is the beginning and the end of a search for truth, then we have left the realm of justice for religion."
That's not what believed survivors means.
Okay, what does that mean?
I'm sorry.
No, let's go ahead, Toronto. Yeah.
When we say believe survivors, it's not believe them without investigation, believe them without interrogation. We have set a precedent in this country of not believing, of thinking that women in particular are lying when they come forward with these allegations, when people come forward with these allegations. So the mantra believe survivors is about, can we start with the premise that people do not often lie about the pain and the trauma of sexual violence? if we start with that premise that if you believe that it's true, then you can have an investigation, you can have an interrogation of the facts and that kind of thing. This is not to say believe people blanket and don't investigate and don't do anything else besides believe them.
And I
go
also
ahead,
think
Alyssa.
I also think that right now we are defining what due process looks like in this type of situation because we've never really defined it before because women haven't come forward. So we do need to have due process. What does it mean to have a fair investigation in these processes so that we can move forward, so that we can change the cultural and societal systemic institutionalization of sexual abuse and assault.
Well, let me get you, Alyssa, let me get you to react to something Brett Stevens wrote in the Times. He said this: "I'd rather be accused of murder," a friend said, "than of sexual assault." He writes, "I feel the same way. One can think of excuses for killing a man, none for assaulting a woman. But if that's true, so is this. Falsely accusing a person of sexual assault is nearly as despicable as sexual assault itself because it inflicts psychic, familial, reputational, and professional harms that can last a lifetime." Alyssa, I'll let you answer that first. Respond first.
These numbers are so low as far as false accusations and women coming forward. They're from 2 to 8%, and that's not taking into account that 70 to 80% of sexual assault is actually not reported at all. So what we're looking at is very, very small numbers. Also, there's no gray area with murder, right? You don't like maybe, commit murder or maybe not. There is very distinct lines that are drawn. So what we're trying to do is define what those lines are so that we can move forward in a way that is not hurtful and not more in support of people that abuse their power than those that are being abused.
All right, I'm going to leave it there for now, but Tarana Burke and Alyssa Milano, thank you both for coming on. And Alyssa Milano, I know you had to get up extra early on the West Coast, so I appreciate that.
You're worth it.
Thanks very much. When we come back, why Democrats have to win a lot more than 50%